Thank you for tuning in to the Leadership Forum, a space where you will hear perspectives from global industry executives on human ingenuity and how they catalyzed it to unlock value and realize their organization's true potential. We will keep it real. We will hear what's worked well and learnings from instances where things could have worked better. I'm your host, Saqib Ali, partner at SpyderWorks and explorer. Say hi to the future, the fast-growing community highlighting the human side of ingenuity. Our guest today is Yohannan Terrell, CEO at Warhol on Wall Street, Director of Columbus Fashion Initiative, award-winning brand strategist, and a creative connector, and who loves to be called Yogi. So welcome, Yogi, and thank you for taking time out from your strategic and fashion-forward schedule.
Thank you. No problem. Thank you for having me this morning.
All right. So, Yogi, we're going to switch into a whole conversation around human ingenuity. But before we do and get too deep, I introduced you and how you appear on formal platforms. Why don't you let our listeners hear in your voice how you would wish to introduce yourself to them? And as you do, please do help broaden our view of Warhol and Wall Street, what it does, and your involvement with the Columbus Fashion Initiative.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Yohannan Yogi Terrell. Everybody calls me Yogi. Just a kid from Akron, Ohio, who, came to Columbus, Ohio, looking for a new future and going to school. And over the years, I've never really been in corporate, came out of extreme poverty after I graduated college. I, chased my dreams in many different ways. And what I've found is that I like to build community. And so, throughout my life, I've been about building community in one way or the other. And so, whether that was entertainment and events to magazines and content, telling people stories, to working in radio and building their outreach programs. And so I've always been about building community and creativity. And so it was easy for me and my partner when we met each other to think about all the things we did and to, really lean into building community. And we started Warhol on Wall Street, which is a branding and strategy firm here in Columbus, Ohio. We started that really to give the creative class a chance to work on really exciting projects and build brands for, companies and organizations. So, Warhol on Wall Street in itself means, where the arts meets business, right? And so that's what our name meant. And so we've been running that for about 13 years. Helping, all types of initiatives from, infant mortality and making a difference there to, working with Mountain Dew and All-Star Weekend. So the range spans, but it's mostly about connecting people, right? Connecting people and really understanding what gets people excited, motivated, all of that. And so from there, as a part of being strategy builders, we started looking at our own home city in Columbus and discovered that Columbus has a rich history in the fashion industry. And so when we found that out, we're the third largest fashion industry in the country, next to New York and LA. And so when we found that out, we said, there's something missing, because if we don't know that and the people don't know it, that means that there's opportunities on the floor that people do not know about. And so we wanted to, take that same approach to strategy and apply it to our city. And so we started the Columbus Fashion Initiative, which is an economic development strategy about creating opportunity, new pathways through education, new pipeline into the retail industry, diversifying the industry, and also spurring venture and entrepreneurship, right, and innovation. So it's all about kind of like where fashion is going, and we're super excited about that. That is the big, hairy, mission that we're on right now. So a lot of it's around still building community.
That is absolutely amazing, Yogi, because our entire intention around Say Hi to the Future is all around building a community, and this is a really good synergy that we're speaking about. So through the Columbus Fashion Alliance, you speak to the future of fashion, learning, innovation, experience. Are there specific industries that you see as core to the future of Columbus's success? And then if you can weave that into how did you get to fashion as being an industry that's core? How do you bring government, education, companies to work together for a common shared success?
Yeah, and that's kind of the key. That's the unlock, right? Is that you have to have, in order for any city to make transformational change, it has to be a coalition of organizations and people, from cultural leaders, community leaders, civic leaders, corporate leaders, all the partners. And so, the industries that are thriving in Columbus, our top 5 industries are healthcare, government, because we're the state capital, education, insurance, and fashion. And so when we found that out, and having such a big network, we have the largest collection of fashion headquarters in Columbus, Ohio. So a lot of your favorite mall brands are all headquartered right here. And so, Victoria's Secrets, Express, Abercrombie, Hollister, DSW, Lane Bryant, Justice, Magnani Shoes. There's so many of them. And then you have even more distribution centers here because we built a distribution hub. So we have Gap, Lululemon, Zulily, Flight Club, Shopify, so many other brands that have their distribution headquarters in Columbus. And so when we started discovering all of this, we really said that where fashion is going, right? We're going away from like going to the mall to discover fashion, and we're discovering it through content right now, right? I buy, probably a couple of items a month from my Instagram, and so with the customer really being, free to shop the globe, and really connect with brands, we saw that there was an opportunity to look at what we've built in our city. We've built this ecosystem in our city to really get product to people, quicker. And where we're located at in Columbus, Ohio, is 1 hour away flight from 60% of the population, 6-hour drive from 60% of the population. And so with that, our logistical hub is the number one logistical hub. So when you start to think about this ecosystem, you got the brands, you got talent, you have, the big shopping centers like Easton, logistical centers where we're located. You start to see the puzzle pieces. And so as we're looking at being strategists, we're thinking, okay, with the influx of technology coming to Columbus, you got Intel just moved here, Amazon is building here, Meta is building here. All of these companies are now chosen this market to be the next tech hub, right? Biggest chip factory in the world. And so we started to see Columbus's landscape is going to change over the years. And so how do we look at fashion and start to turn that into a new economy based off of what we had, but thinking about the people first? So what we wanted to do is, because, I grew up, like I say, in Akron, not really having access to a lot of things. But I know the power of 1 or 2 people can change your life, and I had a mentor who actually helped me get into college. And if it wasn't for that, I probably would have still been running the streets. And so I know the power of when somebody sees potential in you and pours into you. So thinking about that, since fashion is what we do well, we started developing a strategy around educating our residents here in the city about fashion. There's so many young kids who didn't even know that we were the 3rd largest fashion, market in the industry. And so now we start from young, middle school and high school, we start educating them using the retailers and their experience. And so the industries that we see growing really are fashion. We already have tech growing. We look at small batch manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, right? We look at sustainability here as well too. And then we look at community and workforce development. And so those are the things that we're really excited about in this market, because we have the opportunity to kind of curate our city in a way, because we're that underdog. Nobody's really looking at Columbus as a factor when it comes to fashion, even though we technically are. So we can really get to curate how we do it. And so we see that being the bridge where fashion, retail, innovation, and culture come together, and we get to do it differently. And so it's very exciting, and it has the people right in the middle of it, educating them, helping them, giving them things from grants, giving them pipeline opportunities, entrepreneurship opportunities. And so we're going to start seeing a lot more of that be birthed out of this market.
Yeah, that is so fascinating, Yogi. If I were to just think about, you said some amazing things, and there are 2 that I caught on to. Not saying, those are 2 that somehow they frame this for me, which is, on the one hand, you're saying all the jigsaw pieces are already in play. right? That's one aspect of it. On the other one, you said, and we are the underdog, and therefore we get to put those jigsaw pieces together the way we want it.
Yeah.
Now, if I think about those two things, which is beautiful, what has been the challenge so far? Why hasn't it happened already? Like,
Yeah.
what makes, if all the jigsaw pieces, if all the right ingredients have been present for such a long time, why hasn't it happened already? And why does it take a push to make it happen?
Yeah, it's I'm glad you asked that question because I've really been diving into this over the past few years. As I'm doing this work, I'm really looking at a model of how do you create transformational change in the city, right? With the people, the assets, and strategy. And so what we're starting to see is this equation is that we've researched other markets and other cities and seen how they've transformed. We did our case studies on like Indianapolis with amateur sports. We did a case study on Milan with becoming the luxury capital, fashion capital of the world. And no city starts out, great in one area, right? No city does. You look at Austin. Austin, nobody talked about Austin really until by Southwest, really, right? And now Austin is like the hub for, everybody wants to move to Austin. It's the new tech center. It's kind of like a little brother to Silicon Valley. It's got cool stuff in it. But that wasn't until the people really created that movement and attracted people there. So the equation really looks like you got to have some motivation, right? You got to have some motivation. You have to have the will. You have to build the strategy. You have to have the resources. You have to have the access, and you have to include other people. And that all equals transformational change. So when I thought about all of that, exactly what popped in my head, what you said is, why haven't we been doing this before? And I asked, civic leaders and things like that, like, hey, if we're the third largest fashion industry, and you look around and you don't see it, like, why aren't we taking advantage of that? It could solve so many things for so many people. And really, the reality is that, during the time of our heyday with the retail, retail was doing good. We're hiring people, paying, we're getting taxes, and it was good for business. But since the industry's changed, it's not the same model anymore. But I think at that time, people were just comfortable. There wasn't any motivation to do it. We were just comfortable with, hey, we're hiring, it's growing, that sector is growing, it's great. And so we had to reach a point to where retail is starting to shift in order to do something about it. So, I've asked civic leaders, like, why didn't we? And they're like, honestly, we just thought it was working, right? It was working. So there was really no motivation and no will to redefine it. And so that is kind of what we brought together. We connected the dots and brought it to the people in a way to say, hey, listen, we're now facing a shift and a decline in specialty retail, right? Like, we don't shop like we used to. So are we going to just keep on sitting back and watching this industry change, or are we going to invest into the next generation? So now it's more of a conversation around how do we keep this a top 5 industry, right? And how do we do it differently? And so that's why I think it's happening now. And I think, it's about time, because it's the time to do it.
It's funny. So in how I'm hearing you speak about how we speak about this is success breeds complacency.
Yes.
And crisis brings out the opportunity for transformational change.
X.
It's just unbelievable. Because if everyone's fat and happy, right? You really don't want to break that somehow, right? But it's when you have famine that you suddenly start to figure out, I need another way of providing food for everyone. So this is great. This is extremely well
that's
said.
a great way to put that. Yeah, no problem.
All right, so Yogi, let's move on to. I'd love to get your leadership take on ingenuity, and more important, the human side of ingenuity. There's so much talk about AI everywhere that we forget the human side of ingenuity, and I'd love to get your take on how it relates to you and your organization's success so far. What does it, what's your take on it? When has it worked well? When has it not? What have you learned along the way?
Yeah, ingenuity, honestly, I think ingenuity comes when you give people space, time, and tools. And I think we, as a society, we've done less and less of that throughout the years. We've stripped so much from our school system, our educational system, that our kids are graduating high school not ever even knowing how to practice what it means to be, or to practice ingenuity, right? And to actually test things and think about innovation, right? It's mostly about survival. And so we found that when you give people space, when you give people time, when you give people tools, and you challenge them to think about things differently, you would be amazed at what people can think of. And when you give them a challenge, and we've seen it to where we've taken inner city kids who didn't know anything about the fashion industry. They knew that they loved fashion and they knew that they had skills and talent, but they couldn't identify what those were until they were placed in an environment where they actually had some time and some tools and some people sharing with them and helping them identify it. And so what we've seen come from people, we've had kids come through and we work with adults too, but I like telling the story of the youth because they are the future. And so we've had, young adults come in who had passion, who were, who thought they were the weirdo in school because they were the only ones who liked fashion. And then they meet other people like them through our programs. And then we give them, a suite of these tools and challenge them to think about sustainability, to challenge them to think about technology integration into fashion. And you will be amazed at what they come up with without a college degree, without a whole bunch of experience in it, just ingenuity. They think and say, okay, what can I do? And I think that's the thing about human nature is that, this AI conversation is very scary to a lot of people. And I agree, because we don't understand it, and the creators of it don't understand it. And so when you give something too much power and you still don't understand how it works, that's a scary thing. But you cannot count out, human nature. And humans are the ones that think about, why can I not put this square in this or this round peg in this square hole? We're the ones that constantly think totally different, and computers cannot mimic that. And sometimes you need that freedom of thought. No matter how much of our brains we use and how much computers can calculate faster than we can, we're going to think about some things that a computer would never consider, because it has not been programmed to think about doing things that are not possible. And so I highly believe in human nature, and we've seen how human nature can shift in a matter of a pandemic and how we can change the way we even think. So you have to give room and space for that. And that's what I'm very passionate about.
That's great. And so tell me, that's a great framework, Yogi. Tell me of a time within your organization that you tried the human ingenuity aspect. It didn't work. What did you learn? What ingredient was not present, and how did you move forward with that?
Yeah, sometime where human ingenuity didn't work. I would say, we've had some projects where, but I don't look at it as not working either, though. I look at it as, failing forward. So we've had, I'll give you an example. Even with sustainability, we did a project with OSU to work with some college students, and we wanted to challenge them to, think about, sustainability in a way. And it was a sprint. We did it over a sprint, and the whole concept of the sprint was, learn about sustainability, learn about, Columbus and what things we could solve for our city, because we have such a, big industry here. And so, we gave during the sprint, the students came up with a ton of concepts and ideas, but one thing that was missing really was the data from the retailers, the data from the industry, to be able to give them a better sense of just how much waste, we are creating in this market. And that's a sensitive topic. So, they were really working with not much data to inform them on it. And so as they started to create ideas and thoughts and strategies and things like that, we didn't really get to a groundbreaking, concept. It was some good stuff, good surface stuff, but it really didn't achieve what we wanted to. And that was not on them. It was just that they didn't have the right inputs. And so from there, we learned from that. And then we teamed up with Swaco, our waste management, redirecting company here in the city. And we did a full year of research to learn more about how much waste is created and produced in our city. And so now we have that white paper, it's done. And so we're going to now go back and do it again. And we're going to say, okay, so the first time we weren't able to really put too much rubber to the road because we didn't have the inputs, and now we do. So we're going to go back and try it again. So, you know, it's all about failing forward. And I think the lesson we learned is that before you can really, give people a chance to really disrupt something, you got to give them the right information.
Inputs. They need the right inputs. Awesome. What a great learning that is, Yogi. On the one hand, you are a advocate of sustainability, right? Which is I completely understand. I know from your work and whatever. On the other hand, you're speaking about the fashion industry. The fashion industry, in the way it's turned to fast fashion, is actually going against sustainability in a lot of ways. The amount of water it consumes, the amount of greenhouse gases that it emits, even from, in-house, sometimes on the human rights aspect, in some places, in some developing countries, how people are being used. But I do want to get your take on how do I square that thing off, right? You've got sustainability and you've got fashion.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even, I mean, it's really where it has to go. I equate it to the electrification of the car industry, right? So when you think about it like this, is that because of globalization, because of social media, we've seen too much. And fashion, you're right, fashion on one hand has become, well, kind of not even just fashion. If you noticed, our society now around the globe is we get more caught up in moments. We get caught up in moments and really quick moments in culture. And those moments spur us to do, a lot of different things in a short amount of time. And so where before, when you just lived your life, you were informed by media, and you just you bought clothes when you needed them, things like that. But now, a Barbie movie comes out and everybody goes and buys something pink. Everyone's like, oh, I got to go, Beyonce has a concert and she says, hey, everybody wears silver. And so you're going out and you're buying the cheapest silver thing because you're only going to wear it once, and just to show up for this event, because we get so caught up in events and movements like, oh, this is a moment I got to be a part of. Let me go and buy everything I need, pumpkin spice everything, silver everything. So we are as a culture, we're in this kind of phase of we live in these moments and we dive deep in them. And so as a world, as a global, unit, we've seen too much. We understand the impact. So, we're steadily, while we're a part of the fashion culture, right? We're a part of the fashion. We all are. We are still seeing this growth, more and more growth in sustainability, because it has to happen. And so it's not going to happen overnight, just like electrification of all cars won't happen overnight, because you have to build infrastructure into it. But at the end of the day, it will create a better world. And it's not just, and you have to not be afraid of just doing your part. Like, we know where most of the pollution is coming from other countries, right? Where there's less regulation, and we can't do anything about that. But if we could do something about, our space and our time, and I think the younger generations are really going to lead that. Like, they understand that, hey, if we keep on this trajectory, then we're going to have some problems. But now you're starting to see a lot of technology come out. Like, honestly, one of the things we're looking at is, how do you create a zero waste supply chain? And there are companies out there. We're literally attracting companies to the market now that specialize in sustainable methods, where on-demand manufacturing, small batch manufacturing is starting to take over. And so to give you like some ugly truth on fashion, say a company makes 10 shirts. They only sell an average of 3 of those shirts. So you make 10 shirts, you sell 3, you try to sell the rest, they don't sell. You end up either destroying them or, cutting them down and spending millions of dollars to shred them to make them a part of some filling or something, And so that model has to change. And so now on-demand manufacturing, small batch manufacturing is where it's going. And people do want they don't want one of 500,000 shirts anymore. They want one
Sure.
of 50. And so I think over time, as long as there's, especially with the next generation driving it, it'll start to happen more and more and more where brands will start aligning themselves with, on-demand, small batch manufacturing, using sustainable fabrics and things that have been recycled, at least in some markets, not all over, but in some markets and in some countries will probably be forced to. But I don't look at it as a bad thing. We know that we waste a lot, and we've, just gotten more hip to it, but change is coming still.
No, and the way I've heard your input back is there are three key areas in how we grapple with this. One of them is on inputs. So, hey, recycle and all that sort of stuff. That's one.
Right.
Second is on from the cotton. Oh, I'm using cotton as just as a way from
Mm-hmm.
the cotton crop to a shirt that comes out. Along the value chain, along the value chain there are lots and lots of wastages, and how can we take those out?
Yeah.
And then the third one I think is amazing, which is, and you're saying the younger ones are going to be there, which is how do you change consumer behavior, which is
Right.
not all about getting that next silver thing or the next pumpkin spice, whatever, but it's about, hey, do I really need it? And I don't want just one of the 1,000. I want one of the 50, so a small bag. So
Yeah.
all of those things are going to make an impact. So thank you for doing that. I'm just looking at our time. It's been an amazing conversation. It's funny how much fun when you're having, you really don't
Yeah.
know how much time has gone
I
by.
was flying.
Um,
Yeah. Right. Right. Right.
but
Right.
but we're gonna end this in just a couple of quick ones, which is your career journey has been a remarkable one. And as you reflect back, everything that you know today, Yogi, is there anything you would do differently if you were to go back and retrace your steps?
I don't know. I don't think so, because everything that I've been through has prepared me for where I'm at today. And I've thought about, I'll give you another quick little story. When I was in high school, I really didn't know much about, college and what was out there. And I got recruited by Ivy League school because I had a really good GPA and I could play football. And I remember a coach coming in to recruit me to this Ivy League school, and because it wasn't Harvard or Yale, I never heard of it before. And so, my friends were like, "Hey, what school was that?" They were trying to. I was like, "I don't know, some school up in New Hampshire, some BS." And then, like later on, when I realized what it was, I was kicking myself in the butt, like, "Crap!" I took the opportunity. I think it was after watching that movie Facebook about how
It,
like they all got together. And I was like, damn it, man, I could have been a part of something like that. But I think if it wasn't for me moving here, right, moving to Columbus instead of going to Ivy League school, would I ever found out about Columbus's fashion industry? Would I ever have, done the things that I've done and gotten to learn the things I've gotten to learn? And so I don't think I would really change anything, because I've had a beautiful journey, and all the times I've bumped my head, it's led me to the next chapter of my life. And so I'm glad to be where I'm at now, and I feel blessed in a lot of ways. So although there's certain things I'm like, man, I wonder what would have happened. How does this story play out if you would have went left instead of right? And so I think about things like that all the time. But you never know what will happen in those moments. So I'm grateful that I landed where I landed so far, and I feel like my path is, I still have a wide journey ahead of me, so I'm here for it.
that's cool, beautiful. It's all, gratitude is about all we can have.
Yeah.
What's your advice to other leaders?
My advice to other leaders: being a leader is hard. And I'll say my advice to other leaders is take time for yourself to just be still and to listen, to listen. I think awareness as a leader is very important. Sometimes you can get so caught up in leading, in the active leading, that you don't listen, or you don't become aware or self-aware of what's happening around you. And so I try to take time to be intentional around listening, being aware, and just and being still enough to see what's happening in the world around me, and then I think take all of that and just add in a lot of empathy and understanding. And I think, you could be a great leader. I lead from the heart. I lead because I want to help other people. And I've had those experiences. And if you haven't had if you haven't had any experiences that relate to your audience, try to get as close as to that as you can. Just dive into the world, a little bit more so you can have a better understanding, because it'll help you connect the dots of why people act like they do, what people need from you and what they need from leaders. So just look around, be still, take some time to yourself to look around and be aware. Yeah.
Lead from your heart. And this is exactly where we're going to end it. But thank you again, Yogi, for taking time and sharing your insights. Our listeners would love to hear more from you. We will tag you and Warhol and Wall Street in our show notes. But this has been a great conversation. Before I let you go, is there a message or a thought that you came into this conversation that I never got a chance to ask just because of how I was asking the questions, but you want our listeners to be hearing that?
Yeah, no, I came into it not really. I like being interviewed without knowing what the questions are going to be. So even if I get pre-reads, I don't really read them thoroughly as much, because I like thinking on the fly. I like activating my brain in a way that's like, oh, okay. So I think the questions that you asked were great. And I think that, even a challenging one. So I think you did a great job at that. You have to be able to push a little bit in order to really get to the meat of it. I don't like surface interviews, so I like getting to the meat of some stuff. And I think you did a great job at that. So no, I think it was great.
Thanks a lot. The Say Hi to the Future podcast series is produced by Sonia Romero, edited by Matt Miller, and special effects by Edward Vasquez. Please leave us your thoughts and let us know if there's a guest you want us to have a conversation with. You can find all Say Hi to the Future podcast series on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube.